Welcome back to the Ripewave audio community. My name is John, and for this video, we're finally doing some additional wiring to gear us up for full 9.2.4 immersive audio here in the Ripewave Audio Theater. And we've been slowly moving towards this. You might have seen a video back 8 months ago from us, how we were planning out where the in-ceiling speakers were going, figuring out all the angles. I'll post the link to that video for your convenience. But now we had the electricians finally get here. It's taken a long time to actually get a contractor here to do the work. A month and a half later, he did come and got everything done in one day. So about $1,000 worth of labor. I did buy the wire up front for him. I did all the planning up front for him to make it go a lot smoother. But we do have our in-ceiling speakers that we purchased over a year ago. We took advantage of some low-cost deals that were out there. We really did think Polk Audio was closing out these models. They did disappear from their website for a while, but now they're back, and the prices are actually higher than they were. So we actually were glad that we did take advantage of that. But to do in-ceiling, it's not as easy. You really do have to cut the holes in your ceiling and know, that you're putting them in the right place, not just sonically, but they're not going to interfere with any pipes or other thing that might be in the ceiling. So that's the tricky part of doing these in-ceiling setups. But let's get back to the wiring. So as I was planning this out, I did put a sheet together that figured out where I wanted to wire this, where I wanted to run 2 conductor, where I wanted to run 4 conductor speaker wire, all 12 gauge. And we got our speaker wire from Monoprice. So we either got 12.2 or 12.4. And you say, well, John, why are you doing 12.4? Not for real sonic advantage, to be honest. If a speaker has 4 binding posts, I do run 4 conductor to it, just in case, right? If I ever wanted to buy amp something, probably not. It's more of the comfort that if we did have a problem with one of the wires, I know I've got another set there, and I don't have to run another wire later on. I find that the cost of wire is cheaper than the labor to put it in. So that's why I run the 4 conductor. And rather than running 2 sets of 2 conductor, it's all bundled up into one set of insulation, and it runs easier. For the balance connections, and we're doing something unique here, is we're starting to divide up the components, some going in the front of the room, some going in the back of the room. So why are we dividing up our components between front and back? And I'm not suggesting that this is right for everyone. I'm trying this and I'm presenting it to you so you can just see an alternate way of doing it. I know a lot of people just put all their components in one rack, whether that's in the theater room or hidden away and into a closet that you can't see or hear the components. And that's a very good solution. You can wire that really nicely in the back. But given our situation, we're keeping them in the theater room. But I do want to minimize the length of cable between the amplifiers and the speakers. So what did I do? Is I've taken the speaker wires that are the speakers that are at the back of the room, so our side surrounds, our height ceiling speakers, and our rear speakers, and we're wiring it to the back of the room where I'm sitting today, and this is where we're going to place our amplifiers. So that length is shorter. And so our fronts, left, right, center, and front wides are at the front with its amplification. There's one other piece of equipment that I'm going to put at the rear of the room, and that's going to be the turntable. Now that we have the Parasound zPhono preamplifier, which has XLR outs, I feel comfortable running that longer distance. I'll have that balance connection back to the front of the room that has the processor, and I'm going to get a processor that has all balanced XLR inputs and outputs. Well, at least one XLR input. That's what you'll typically find. but not on all processors. It does constrain me to what is out there that we could go with. I want to make sure that there's something that will take XLR balance as an input, but certainly XLR outputs, so that the processor connections from the front of the room will go to the back of the room here, as we've got it for the rear speakers. And that's the plan there. Now, to make this easier for the electrician, now I did have this sheet available to him. To make it super simple for him, is I put these color-coded labels on the wall. And in here you can see that I've got an orange sticker that says 4 of those cables going up to the ceiling. And then at each ceiling speaker location, I also put an orange sticker. So the electrician only had to match orange to orange. And then the 2 gray stickers here, those are the side surrounds. So I said, give me a pair, which currently the side surrounds are running to the front of the room. Send another length of cable to the back of the room, and that's where those are. And that purple sticker, those are the connections back to the processor that I have here. Now, currently, I'm going to be running my ceiling speakers through an older amp that only takes unbalanced connections. So I had him run the ceiling speakers to both the front and the back. And even these speakers currently run to the front, and the sides run to the front. So we have the options. If we ever want to change this, I've got these rear and ceiling speakers running to both front and back, so for lots of flexibility. And ultimately, the way I'm going to close this off, I'm just going to put a brush plate on here so the wires just pass through. And then I'm going to take, as you saw from another video, our Neutrik XLR ends, and we're going to put the appropriate ends on here with the appropriate color code for the speaker that it's serving. That will make it easier. And then on the other locations, we were going to use wall plates. So for the front wides and for the subwoofers, which I haven't talked to you about the subwoofers yet, as you may recall, is I've got 2 Rhythmik F18 sealed subwoofers in the room, and they're mounted at diagonal to each other, one in the front left, one in the front rear, about I can't remember if it's about a quarter of the way into the room on each end. And instead of having cables along the floor as I've been running temporarily, is now I've got XLR connections will go to the subwoofer. And for the front wides that will be on a wall plate, for the future, I don't have those speakers right now. We're using Speakon connections. And you can get Speakon in 2-pole, 4-pole, I think even 8-pole. We bought the 4-pole Speakon, which means you can run 4 conductor 12-2 to the wall plate, and the front wides will connect. I love these connectors because you twist them on and they lock in place. And that's what will connect our front wide speakers with. So we're trying these out. And what I'm reading online, shouldn't be any sonic problem with that. I mean, they're only front wides, they're not the front. Front will run those direct from the amplifiers. But for the front wides, I think the Speakon connections are going to work out real well. And the good news is when they cut the holes in the location that we marked out for the ceiling speakers, there was no studs in the way, there were no pipes in the way. This is what we were worried about the most. Of course, a trained electrician, knows how to figure this out better than I do to make sure. So he gave me the assurance, yeah, I can cut these in the places that you've marked it out. The one other change we made from the last video 8 months ago is if you look at the Dolby speaker placements, and I'll go back to my notes here, and we ultimately, the front speakers are saying, a minimum of 22 degrees out on horizontal plane from your seating position. And we have, well, a bigger room here. We're 27 long by 13 wide. I wish it was wider because we're not really getting the separation for the depth of the room that we've got. So I'm right at the 22, but that's when I move those speakers out from the storage location. I have to bring them in a little bit, if you recall, because I got doors in the way. But if I want to do critical listening, I'll bring them out to that 22 degree location. And if they're in that location, what Dolby says in their guidance is you make your ceiling speakers in line with where your front placements are, as well as your back speakers. And I always thought that was a little much, particularly my room. And I was worried about sonically enough separation there. And I listened to one video that Anthony Germani did, and his advice is very good. Of course, he was involved with THX and everything early on. But he says the ceiling speakers should be halfway in between your left and right fronts and the center speaker. So in our case, our center speaker is 62 inches to either the left or the right front speakers. So you divide that by 2, that's 31 inches in our case. So 31 inches from center became our ceiling location. Now the video I did 8 months ago, I had that a little different, but it was only like 2 inches. So I had since seen Anthony's video. I said, okay, that makes perfect sense, because you want your ears to be able to figure out where the sound is coming from. If a speaker is too close to another one, that's going to cause problem. So now I think we're pretty good. And if you look at it, where you're sitting on the couch in the main listening position, that if you do an angle from where you're sitting, that ceiling speaker almost lines up on the same angle as the front speakers. So I'm happy with the way that came out. Now, of course, we don't have this all together yet. There's work for me to do. I've got to solder the XLR connections on. We've got to put the boxes in there. But what I did is a simple test, and I hooked up my processor with the 5-channel amp. I only needed 4 to these new surround ceiling speakers. And I put on quadraphonic mixes and 5.1 mixes of audio only content, because those are records I know what they're supposed to sound like, and I know that those quadraphonic and 5.1 mixes are quite active in all 4 speakers. And then I listened, and it sounds pretty darn good. These Polk speakers that I'm using, the LS900s, which is their top of the line ceiling speakers. A side note on that, I'm actually quite surprised that Polk has not yet come out with in-wall or ceiling speakers that have the same drivers in them as their new Legend speakers. So the radial ring tweeter in the LS900s match that from the previous generation, the LSI-M, and not too far off from the LSI speakers. Of course, I have the LSI-M for the rear speakers, but don't match their current generation. So I'm surprised they haven't done that. We'll see if they do that in the future. So back onto the conversation here, these sounded great. Now there's some settings on the LS900 speakers. If you're close to a wall, you can push a button and it makes some adjustments. We didn't have to do that because these are far enough away from the wall, etc. So, but on their own, I mean, I wouldn't want them as primary speakers, but they sounded really nice. And that gives me a feeling like, first, it tested out the wires and all the wiring is good. And second of all, how good of quality. And I think listening something with normal audio first measures its quality better than listening to it with movie content. So that's what we've done so far. We're going to be circling back as we evolve our journey into immersive, but what are your thoughts? Do you like what we're doing here at Ripewave Audio as far as how we're approaching our wiring? I'm not offended if you say, no, you should really put everything in one single rack. That's okay. But we experiment, and we're going to give you that feedback later on. And how is this working out for us? Are we happy with that choice? And mounting the turntable at the back of the room, do you think that's a good idea? The one concern I have is when the turntable is up front near the front speakers, that can cause some additional vibration. So I'm trying to keep it away from that part of the system. So that feedback would be great. Please put those comments in. And if you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe to this Ripewave Audio community. And be sure to hit that bell icon so you'll be notified when the next video is posted. Until then, keep evolving your audio experience.